What's up, everyone? Today we're going to talk about a technique that people either love or hate, and it's called the drop shot rig. So the drop shot rig is basically just a rig that has a knot tied about a foot up with a hook and then a weight at the bottom. Let's start out talking about the different places I like to throw a drop shot rig and why I like to throw a drop shot rig. So a lot of times, especially in Indiana, a lot of guys don't throw it. Some of the TVA lakes where they get in those big schools, a lot of guys later in the summer will throw them to use them as like cleanup baits or just finessey approaches to target those schools that have been really high pressured. But a lot of times in Indiana, a lot of guys don't throw it. So it's also another technique that could work on areas that people don't throw. But typically I use it as a cleanup technique after I go through with like a big crankbait or big worm, stuff like that. I'll throw this drop shot in order to get an extra bite or two before I leave an area. And another reason that it is good is if you're trying to keep it off the bottom a little bit. So like whether you have like a muddy bottom, or if you have grass on the bottom that you want to, like if you have maybe 6-7 inches of grass, you can put this thing up 12 inches and keep it off the bottom and keep it right above that grass, and those fish might be sitting in that grass looking above them. So there's just certain times where this bait can really shine. I like to throw it a lot around brush piles, stumps, lay downs, and like I said, grass. If the grass isn't too tall, I'll throw it above the grass like that. The other good thing about a drop shot is you can set the depth that this your weight is, and you can set how high this is based on the day and based on how you want to go about the fishing that you're doing. A lot of times I keep this the same. I like to keep my hook about 10 to 12 inches above my weight, and I don't know, that's just kind of a thing that I've always done, and it keeps it consistent. But I've seen guys that'll make it only like a 3 or 4 inch leader, or guys that'll make it a 2 or 3 foot leader. And the shorter the leader you have, the closer it is to that weight, the more that weight's going to be affecting your bait. So if you have like a 2 or 3 foot leader, this bait's going to be up there doing whatever it wants to, and it's really going to have a lot more action. It's going to look a lot more natural than, say, if you have like a really short leader. It's not going to have, it's going to be affected more by that weight on the bottom. As far as the line size and everything I use, I like to use a 8-pound test, or anywhere from 6 to 10-pound test, really. Typically I always throw 8-pound tests, but if I get like in a real clear water situation, I'll go down to 6, or if I get in a area where I'm going to be fishing brush piles or something with some thick cover, I'll move up to 10 or maybe even 12-pound test, just to make sure that I can get those fish out of there once I end up hooking them. The knot that I tie is a polymer knot. And when I get done tying a polymer knot, I'll take the tag end of it and I'll actually stick it through the eye of this hook, and I'll push it down. And then what that does is it'll allow it to have a perfect 90-degree angle on that knot, and it allows your bait to look a lot more natural than if it's upside down or to the side or any other way. As far as the rod and reel I just use a standard 2500 size spinning reel. This one is a Shimano Vanford, and I use like a 7-foot medium light, or something with a little bit of tip. That way I can fling this thing out there, and I also can get a good hook set on these fish whenever they do end up biting. So let's put this away and let's talk about some of the different baits and hooks and weights and stuff that I end up using for my drop shots. So starting out with baits, there's a lot of baits. I'm just going to show you a couple of them right now. You can really use anything. I've seen people throw tubes on their baits. I've seen people throw swim baits. You can use a big hook and throw a 10-inch worm and do power shotting, which is completely different technique, but it's the same concept. So you can basically put anything you want on these things. A lot of times in the northern lakes, what I'll throw is a Berkley flatworm. It's just a little bitty 3-inch piece of plastic that I nose hook. Another bait I really like to throw is a robo worm, and this bait can be thrown on a shaky head, drop shot, anything. It's just a very versatile bait that's got a lot of action to it because it's a hand poured worm. And I'll throw that, and I'll usually nose hook it, but if I'm getting around brush piles, I'll throw that cover shot hook on it, and get it through those brush piles. But that color right there is a Morning Dawn, and that works really good, or just a green pumpkin color works really good. Like I said on some of my other videos before, I like to keep things simple. I don't like to overcomplicate things, so keeping it simple with either a Morning Dawn or a green pumpkin or some variations of that, it doesn't overcomplicate things for me. As far as hooks, I like to either use a size 1 drop shot hook. It's a real small hook, and I end up using that for nose hooking any of my baits or things like that. Nose hooking is whenever you basically take this and stick it right through the nose. It allows that bait to have a lot of action, and it's really natural in the water. Sometimes what I'll do instead of actually nose hooking it is I will basically take that bait and go in about 1/4 inch and then come and leave that hook inside there. And what that does is it gives the same action of nose hooking it, but it keeps that hook point from being exposed, and it keeps it a little bit more weedless. But there's also a hook that you can use called a cover shot, or there's a bunch of different brands out there. This one's an Owner cover shot. It's basically just a regular hook, and it's very small, and if you could see it, it's got this little barb on it right here. And what that does is it'll hold your soft plastic into place. And so you can essentially Texas rig that hook or that drop shot and throw it into some thicker stuff, and it allows you to keep that weedless rather than having to nose hook it and worry about that bait getting stuck and hung up. So basically you would rig it the same way as a Texas rig and have it weedless and throw it on there, and it'll sit up there 90 degrees like a normal drop shot, and you can fish it on that hook through brush piles and stuff without having to worry about it getting stuck as much. As far as drop shot weights, there's a bunch of different styles. Typically I use the cylinder kind like this, but there's also different teardrop kind, ball kind, and different weights. So I have some of each weight in here between 1/8 to 1/2. And the 1/2 and the 3/8 are the only time I really use those is when I'm like up north fishing like the Detroit River or the Lake St. Clair River. Some of those rivers like that have a ton of current flowing through them, or if it's real windy, then I'll go up to that size. But typically I always try to throw the 3/16. I think that's enough weight to get it down 20 foot or however deep I'm fishing, but it's not enough to scare the fish away or overpower the bait. So I like that 3/16 for like probably 90% of the drop shot fishing that I do. Hopefully these tips and tricks on a drop shot really helped you guys out, and hopefully you learned a little bit, and hopefully the drop shot rig allows you to catch a few more fish throughout this summer or any time of the year. Be sure to like and subscribe on the channel, and we'll see you guys next time.